Hello, everybody. It's Landon Smith here. Welcome to today's episode of the Short-Term Rental Pacifier. If you've got a short-term rental, you've been thinking about getting one, starting one, you've probably wondered, should I do Airbnb? Should I do Vrbo? What's the difference? And today we're going to talk about that and go through the pros and cons, the differences of each one so you can make the best decision for you and your property. We'll start with target audience. Airbnb generally appeals to a broader crowd. You've got a lot of solo travelers, you've got couples, you got those looking for those unique experiences like glamping, tree houses, tiny homes, things like that. Guests on Airbnb are also typically more tech savvy, and the platform is much easier to use for the host, which makes managing the reservation, the check-in and out processes a lot easier. It's also much more complicated of an app in terms of actually finding a place because there are so many options and categories for stays, which can be overwhelming to a guest. Vrbo tends to focus more on families, larger groups, the more traditional vacation spots, entire homes, and family-friendly accommodations. So if you've got a large property, this is probably where you'll do really well, but that's not to say that you wouldn't in a smaller property. In my personal experience, Vrbo guests have been less tech savvy, and the Vrbo platform is not great for processes on the host side, but it's much more simple in terms of finding a place and booking it on the guest side. So you will need to make sure that you have all of your instructions ultra clear for these guests to avoid issues before they arrive. Do not lean on only the channel message, text and email, and even call them if you have to. And FYI, Vrbo guests tend to spend 33% more on average than Airbnb users, which is obviously a huge win, especially on larger properties. Then we get to fee structure. Airbnb has two options. They have the split fee, which is the most common. That's where hosts pay about 3%. And then the second option is the host only fee, where the host pays 14 to 16% of the subtotal, which is a lot. Vrbo gives you two options as well, 5% per booking plus 3% payment processing fee, or you can do an annual subscription of $500 plus 3%. So if you're getting high booking volume, the subscription might make more sense for you. Then you have when we go to booking patterns. Airbnb tends to cater more to the shorter last minute stays, but you can still get the longer stays for sure. It's obviously the number one OTA, and most STR hosts are going to get the majority of their income from Airbnb. Vrbo typically brings in longer bookings. A lot of them are planned way off in advance. Families looking for that week-long stay, especially during peak season, spring break, things like that. And again, it's just general. We still get last-minute bookings and shorter stays with Vrbo. But FYI, Vrbo guests actually book 3 months in advance on average, so that's a huge deal if you like having predictability on your calendar. Then we get to reviews and guest experience. Reviews are obviously critical. Airbnb generally tends to bring more frequent reviews, which helps our visibility grow faster. On Vrbo, they come in less frequently, but they carry more weight because there's not as many of them. And so you really want to make sure that your approach to each platform matches what the general guest pool on each platform is, whether it's Vrbo or Airbnb. Then we're going to hit on guest verification really quick. And I've talked about this before. I will note this again. Both platforms are absolutely terrible at vetting guests. A verified guest on either platform without a review is worthless, to me at least. It's about as good as their damage claims process, which both are terrible, but whatever, we still use them because we have to. For now, listing on both platforms, should you? The short answer is yes. If you can manage it, yes. Listing gives you access to a larger guest pool. And for us, 25% of our bookings last year were on Vrbo. But it also comes with some potential major headaches like managing multiple calendars and doing communication through email in the Vrbo app, in the Airbnb app, in your personal cell phone. And no thank you is what most people say to that. Then you get syncing calendars messy if you're not careful. Double bookings are an absolute nightmare to deal with. And then you have to deal with guest messaging from different platforms. So it's really a lot. So what do? You either use a channel manager to keep your calendars in sync across both platforms. It's a lot of work up front, but it'll save you a ton of time and stress, totally worth it. Or you can hire a company like mine to do it for you. And the bottom line is, and this is my opinion, if you've got this cozy, quirky spot that appeals to a wide range of guests, Airbnb is probably going to be the best fit. And if you've got a larger home that's more for families, big groups, Vrbo is probably going to be your go-to. But listing on both is how you're going to maximize your occupancy and your revenue. Just be ready for the extra work that it takes to manage multiple calendars and apps for guest communication. To make the most, you're going to want to show up in most places. So again, and yes, I'm actually semi-selling you. If all that sounds like a mess, that's actually what we do. So we set people up on both platforms and multiple other platforms. So they have the ability to sync the calendars, handle guest communication, have their cleaners notified automatically, all in one place. And that's in addition to our dynamic pricing, our AI guest communication, our damage insurance, direct booking marketing, ID verification. Also, our clients can focus on the fun stuff like making more money, keeping the property in good shape, and giving their guests an amazing experience. And by the way, we are a flat fee model starting at $300 a month. So if you're interested, let us know. But that's it for today's episode of the Short-Term Rental Pacifier. I appreciate you guys listening. If you have any questions, want to vet a property, talk about a deal, want to talk about short-term rentals, dive deeper into whatever it is, just hit us up on Instagram. You can also check out our website. That's www.airinn.life, AIRINN.LIFE. And we'll see you next time. See ya.